Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Lipolis Electric, don't be left in the dark, get Lipolis, by Hightower Westchester, managing your well-through fiduciary standards, by White Plains Hospital, by Michael Lambriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins Mahopac Bank. On the Beat In Westchester is our program here at Westchester Talk Radio. We are joined by John Bailey. John Bailey is the publisher and editor of WPCNR, White Plains CitizeNet Reporter Online, and host of White Plains Weekend, people to be heard on a variety of cable sources throughout the county of Westchester. He's on everywhere. John Bailey, thank you for rejoining us here again.
Always a pleasure.
Westchester Talk Radio. Always great to have you and get your insight on what's going on. And it was just hours ago that President Biden delivered his first State of the Union address. What do you make of it?
Well, listen, he tried to touch on too many bases.
Why too many bases?
Well, he tried to address things like the economy, inflation. He started off with the Ukraine war, the Russo-Ukraine war, as I call it, to go with the Russo-Japanese war and the various Russo wars they fought over the years. And then he made references to coming together. It was a mixed bag.
He threw a lot in. He transitioned quickly from one item to another at certain points, like when he got into immigration. He got into immigration and out of it pretty quickly, for example. Certain things that struck me. He tried to stay positive, no doubt about that. Talked about the future and the greatness of America, no doubt about that. He hailed the Ukrainian heroes who've been throwing themselves in front of tanks, or as we see today, thousands of Ukrainians lining up in front of a nuclear site that they think the Russians might be headed towards. So we could get a Tiananmen Square kind of scene out of this, unfortunately, from what we are possibly seeing. But as much as he hailed the bravery of the Ukrainian people, he did not say, we will work with NATO to impose a no-fly zone. Again, a commander-in-chief does not say, I will never use my troops. He said, I will never use my troops.
Right. Well,
a deranged warmonger like Vladimir Putin, what does he make of this?
Well, he says he's going to throw in the MiGs, if they still fly MiGs over there.
MiGs, yeah.
I go back to Korea,
And Vietnam, you're going back to. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think the MiGs are going to work. So we need a lot more high-tech stuff than that.
Yeah. The reason Russia has not completely taken over is they're not using air power. And the reason the Ukraine hasn't really decimated is just on the front page of the Times today. I think it was on the front page of the convoy, a bunch of sitting ducks rolling down the road. If you use air, you couldn't do that in World War II because the convoys
got running out of fuel. This convoy too.
I mean, air power wins wars, except like in Vietnam when we didn't use enough of it, and they adjusted with each level of pressure we put up in Vietnam, and it's the same thing with Afghanistan.
When we used it in Vietnam, we used napalm, unfortunately. That didn't go over too well.
Well, there were a lot of things that didn't work over there. I mean, and the military assured us they would work, but they eventually didn't. But you can't tighten the screws. You have to go all in with everything you've got. Iraq.
Now we see the Russian convoy running out of fuel.
You've got to go all in.
This is a 17-mile long convoy or 40 miles or whatever it happens to be. We're getting different numbers on that. But this convoy is now running out of fuel, and they will be very sitting ducks for very patriotic Ukrainians who want to send Putin a statement.
They're running out of fuel?
They're running out of fuel.
Well,
they're running out of food, too. Food and fuel.
That's
So who planned this?
That shows his total lack of planning and understanding.
I had people come to me and say, we can't take on Putin militarily. We can't put our troops out there or do a no-fly zone because on the ground, who says we would beat the Russians? Well, if we can't beat this, we're in a pretty sorry state if we had to.
Well, the problem is 6 months ago, he just pulled out of the President Biden pulled out of Afghanistan in a fiasco retreat, and it was not a happy circumstance, and he was roundly criticized for that, and rightly so. They didn't plan it well. But Of course, it goes back to the previous administration, which had no contingency planning for
Joe Biden says we're not at risk of a Putin nuclear attack. Do you believe him? Biden says no.
I don't. Look, I mean, far be it for me to suggest this, so I won't. But my feeling, we are sitting in his first target. We are sitting in his first target, the New York metropolitan area,
correct,
home of the sanction appliers, the bankers and everything. And that would be my first target. Now, we don't realize that we're nuts. What?
There's so much more he can do without nuking us, actually, with cyber attacks, with so much more. With cutting off oil and gas supplies to Europe, which reverberates here in a lot of different ways. There's so much more that Vladimir Putin can do to come back at us. So we have to watch from different angles, different flanks. It's not just about the nuclear threat. Those other threats can be, I'm not going to say obviously as totally effective as the nuclear threat, but they can do a lot of harm and damage to us too.
Well, they already have. They already have. And,
for years, they have.
Yeah. For years.
Joe Biden, when it came to talk about crime, he tried to talk tough, but then he said we're going to hold police accountable and never said one word about holding criminals accountable. Does that send the wrong message?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I mean, there's a lot of criminals out there. In fact, the Supreme Court is now hearing arguments on whether doctors should be sent to jail for overprescribing fentanyl drugs because they're just basically being drug pictures. And those judges ask the most naive questions, didactic, word-wise. They're not judging, is this right or wrong?
Bottom line.
That's right or wrong. That's what Supreme Court is supposed to decide.
And you'll get a variety of different answers from different doctors on that question, I think. You'll get a variety of different medically sourced answers on that question.
Well, I mean, two weeks ago, George Latimer had a huge press conference how we're going to really enforce fentanyl laws and opioid laws because we're getting so much deaths in Westchester,
right?
Which wasn't particularly followed exactly by the standard press. And they don't tell you too much about so-and-so was found dead of an opioid overdose. Maybe
it's been an endemic here for a number of years now, for a decade. The opioid problem has been an endemic. I remember when then State Senator Terrence Murphy worked very hard to try to knock that endemic down back in 2014, 2015, et cetera. Now here we are almost a decade later, and we still have this problem. Masks coming off in schools per Governor Hochul.
Yeah, the jury is out.
Jury is out. According to a Siena poll, most New Yorkers wanted her to wait until the new COVID numbers come in from the CDC, I guess.
That's what she said just last week. That's what she said she would do just last week.
So why is she doing this now then, after all this time, an about face, just turning around like this?
She wants to be popular.
Isn't it better to be popular? You have a pretty good, strong base here in New York State, does Kathy Hochul, who basically agrees with her about masking. Isn't it better to rely on that than try to? This is not the way to reach across the aisle, it seems.
Well, obviously, the legislature was pushing for it. You know, they always push for what the people want, whether the people know what's good for them or not.
Or not, yeah.
Or not. And to my way of thinking, there's a lot of things particularly in White Plains, our superintendent of schools said that he was going to make it optional. You can wear masks to school if you want, which I thought was an excellent thing. I mean, he was leaving it up to the parents and the children, but there are a lot of other questions that he indicated without naming them, what hasn't been decided yet. Are we going to test each kid coming into school daily? Are we going to, or is it going to be at random, like we only tested 60 on the 28th of February in the White Plains School District? 60 kids out of 7,200.
So how do we stay safe that way at that point?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, they made it a little light. In fact, White Plains High School, which had a very effective all-year in-person learning program, no remote learning, they still had 22% of the school population of teachers, students, and administrators come down with COVID.
And that's 22%. A pretty high number. Yeah.
It was approximately 1,700. It was 1,738 persons. So, I mean, that's what happened when they were wearing masks, when they had the shields up. I mean, what do they think is going to happen after this vacation break and they all start coming back? I'm not blaming White Plains. I'm blaming this push to reopen, to get the economy going. And please, that's what they did last spring. We have had now 4 waves of COVID, which we have beaten back. And it has come back every time. And now we are relaxing everything like Governor Cuomo and the legislature did last spring. And what did we get? We got the highest number of infections in a month in January.
We got Delta, we got Omicron. That's what we got after that.
Now, to my way of thinking, it doesn't make sense to do what they're doing until let's keep the mask on through the end of the school year and kill it off.
Yeah, like one athletic director locally told me at a playoff game recently, you know, I do a lot of public address around Westchester and the tri-state area at high school athletic events. One athletic director in Westchester recently, after a playoff victory, I said to him, are we going to maybe open the bleachers on the other side for the next game? And he said, at this point, what we've done has worked so far all of this school year. Why change that now? Let's leave those bleachers up for the rest of this season. We don't need to let any more people in.
A voice of reason.
Mm-hmm.
A voice and safety. Of reason.
Right. John Bailey is the publisher and editor of White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, WPNR, WPCNR.com, and the host of White Plains Weekend, people to be heard on cable systems all around Westchester. Catch John Bailey online here also too, and on TV as well, and at White Plains CitizenNet Reporter on the website too. John Bailey, a variety of new polls are out suggesting that Republicans can make some pretty good inroads in November. And of all places, ultra blue New York State. The biggest reasons for this are crime, concern about the non-reform of bail reform, and inflation. How do we juggle all this together? How do the Democrats juggle all this together and yet reassure people that they have the state on the right track?
Well, they better start thinking about it, because if the polls can be believed, I mean, and as we know, the polls were so wrong 4 years ago. Way wrong. And to my way of thinking, particularly in key states, you know, that was everybody was lying in Michigan.
I don't know how you lie like on a presidential poll when they ask you who are you going to vote for. Tell them. That's the point.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to say who you might vote for, pro or con. And you get a better read. That does everybody justice at that point. I know everybody does not think that way, and people who get polled don't always think that way too. But how do Democrats take this control back of the narrative now that they need to do?
Well, I can say the Democrats can say, we stopped COVID, we brought the New York State economy back, and that is why you see masks coming off. They have to say, we are we are in the money by next August, and that will defeat the Republican Army. This is really a political decision.
Mm-hmm.
Purely political. It's making conservative parents happy who don't believe they should have their children wear masks. I tell you, I would give them a space helmet. I mean,
I'll wear what I have to be safe. I agree with you.
Yes, exactly.
I was in a
restaurant last night. Look, I'm telling you what we're facing. I was in a restaurant last night, very popular, busy place in Harrison, wonderful restaurant. I walked in with my mask on. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody.
And we see that everywhere now, all of a sudden.
Our age, people our age, young people, no masks. It was elbow to elbow. And, we sat in a booth sort of cut off for most of the people. But I'm saying this does not bode well. We went on Tuesday night with a friend because we felt that it was, be less crowded. Boy, were we wrong. But I mean, if you're going to see these crowds of people in the hardest entertaining month of the year, you've got St. Patrick's Day, you've got
Easter,
March Madness,
right?
Which lots of parties, lots of bar frequentation, not to mention students coming back to school after maybe they were away last week, and you don't know what they're bringing back to their schools. Teachers, right. Administrators taking a break. And, in White Plains, I just hope there's a good population of students still coming back with masks because they are the spread factor.
We see so many people getting rid of the masks. Like you say, there are places I walk into and I'd like to say, hey, guys, anybody kind of recall what happened the past 2 years? Can we be a little more careful here? And I understand people want to get out, get back to their normal, regular, everyday lives. Yeah. You see so much traffic on the road, and people are not going to work, not going back to the office. Yeah. Where are they going? Right. Going out somewhere. We see the way people are driving. It's like they have pandemic liberation, and you can't drive like this on the road, and you can't act like
very reckless driving. Lots of
reckless driving going around.
High speed.
People want to get out. No question about that.
And gas will be up to $4 a gallon very quickly. It was I paid $3.85 with cash.
Maybe
this
$5
weekend.
Yeah,
$3.85. And this is not going to be happy. And that was another thing that Biden said about inflation, that he was going to try and control it. Well, the only way to do it is to put in price controls. The only way you can really do it is put in price controls. I feel this business of inflation is being blamed on shortages. Stop. Just don't raise your prices. Corporations have to bite the bullet once in a while responsibly. They are the ones that are raising prices. They fired people, didn't bring them back, and they're manufacturing less, so they can now charge more and make it up. It's typical capitalist irresponsibility. Typical.
What Biden talked about was decreasing costs for people and increasing their pay. But we see, according to these polls, the Democrats in New York State are sliding down. Could that be the residual effect, too, of hanging on to the coattails of President Biden and the way he's going down in polls?
Well, look, people vote with their pocketbooks. And when the pocketbooks get squeezed, it's an opportunity for sophists who create a false positive and a false narrative. Come to us. We will solve this problem because we'll get everybody back working, everything will get back to normal. That's what people want to hear. Make America Great Again, one of the greatest slogans of all time. It was really good. As an advertising man, I can tell you, it's something everybody wanted, and they fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. And they fell for it. And it's now going to be promulgated again. Look what's happening in Texas. the primaries all went.
Hey, we got
way of
Abbott
it.
against Beto O'Rourke in November, right? That should be quite a race.
Well, it should be a better race, but I saw Abbott in a wheelchair, okay, in a picture in the Times. I didn't know he was disabled. If he is, or maybe he was just.
Yeah, I don't
using
think
that
he's
to see
disabled.
more
It might have
people.
been something else, some other reason.
Yeah, it was very unusual, but I mean, but anyway, Abbott. I mean, these people that elect these type of leaders without feeling, he still hasn't fixed the power in Texas, and nobody's worried about that. Wow. But anyway, that's what says performance doesn't count if the message is something that you internally and mentally believe in. Oh, he's right about that. I trust him. How can you trust somebody without a plan?
All right, so let's talk messaging with regards to Andrew Cuomo and his seeming purported return. The ads he's running now indicating that he's saying, I'm innocent. He does not use the words vote for me yet, but there is talk that he's going to mount a charge against the lady who brought him down, State Attorney General Tish James, and he seems like he's going to make a beeline for her yet. Even public officials say across New York State, Democratic public officials say, come on, Andy, if you want to get back in the game, the time is not now.
Well, if it isn't now, when?
I think if he ran against Tish James right now, he'd be crushed.
He could be crushed, but then that would finish him. Obviously, he's not running unless he thinks he can win. And
No
something
question.
has to be telling him that. I mean, he is that dumb considering what he got himself in for. Heck, when I umpire a girls' softball game, I make it absolutely imperative I never touch a player in the least. And if I do, when I'm behind the plate, I say, oh, excuse me, and I acknowledge that I touched her, but hey, excuse me, and I make sure everybody hears it. I was very afraid of that. But I see persons in sports put their arms around these players, and
could he be laying?
If I was a public official, there would be no baby kissing.
Could Andy Cuomo be laying the groundwork for a run for governor now in 4 more years, 4 years down the road?
Well, that's the Nixon strategy. Building bridges from 1960 to 1968, watching Lyndon Johnson tar baby himself in Vietnam by escalating it to the point where Johnson would not run, and Humphrey ran a very weak candidate, and Nixon slides on in.
Harry Wilson, prominent businessman, Harry Wilson has joined the fray for the Republican nomination for governor. The Republican state convention going on this week in Nassau County. And Nassau County, of course, turning red with the election of Bruce Blakeman as county executive. And, of course, the sheriff's offices on Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk, shockingly went red last November. Could Harry Wilson be a factor amongst the Republicans? Andrew Giuliani, former Westchester executive who ran for governor against Cuomo in 2014, Rob Astorino, and Long Island Congressman Lee Zeldin? Or is maybe former Governor George Pataki the wild card in all of this here? Knowing now that there are people pushing him to run, George Pataki says, well, I don't think I'm going to run, but I'm glad some people think I did a good job as governor. And a new poll now showing that if George Pataki and Kathy Hochul ran head-to-head today, Kathy Hochul would win only by 5%. Margin of error in this poll, 3.5%.
Well, I don't believe in polls. Please, how can you believe after 2016? How can you believe it?
How can you believe after he's not been governor for a long time, had certain medical issues, and is in his late 70s now, too? Not that that matters, it doesn't, but perception about that does.
Well, how popular is Zeldin, for example? How popular are any of these guys? It's like the posse that was chasing Robert Redford and who was it? Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah.
Yes, in the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
Is Kathy Hochul's best bet that she does not have what seems to be a formidable opponent that might come out and chase her down on the GOP side?
Well, no, the big danger is that there will be a third party candidate gets on the ballot and splits the Democratic vote of Hochul. That's how the Republicans do it.
Could it be Andrew Cuomo?
That could be too, but
all right,
well,
let's go to
does
Cuomo
have a organization that is behind it?
He's got his own people in place still, like his spokesman, Rich as a party, and others. And I think he can put together something pretty quick if he wanted to. The question is, like you say, don't think he'll do it unless he's pretty sure that he's going to win. Let's go to some of the local races, John Bailey. The race for state assembly district currently represented for a long time now by Tom Abenanti. That district basically encompasses Greenberg and part of Mount Pleasant, and he's being challenged from the Westchester County Board, fellow Democrat, Mary Jane Shimsky. Now, here's a caveat here. Mary Jane Shimsky once worked for Abenanti's predecessor in that state assembly post, the late Richard Brodsky. So Shimsky seems to be targeting going after the office that her one-time boss held, and she's done a great job, no doubt, on the county board, but she has bigger sights set here. Mary Jane Shimsky saying that Tom Abenanti hasn't done enough when it comes to COVID, or he made promises in other areas that he did not fulfill. Abenanti
What was Mr. Abenanti supposed to do for COVID? I mean, it's a false issue.
He claims he made other claims about other things that he didn't do. He says, yes, I did, and then some.
Yeah, but I mean, Abenanti is a strong advocate for the disabled. He's the only person in both houses that talks about the disabled. The only one, which is a public disgrace. And, he has a disabled child. So he's very passionate about that. And he has come up against the governor on the masking situation. He is outspoken, and therein is why he's being targeted, because they do not like what I like to call upstart crows in the chamber.
Will Mike Spano, the mayor of Yonkers, take on Jamaal Bowman for Congress for the Democratic nomination for the congressional seat held by Bowman since he defeated Elliot Engel in 2020 on the Democratic?
Yeah, that's a disgrace that they redrew that district to make it virtually highly white, as opposed to Bowman's original district, which he ran on. So I think he could very well lose. And this is another thing. Bowman is black. Mondaire Jones is black. Two new, very vocal voices. And Mondaire Jones's district was rejiggered too.
Into Orange County, of all places. That's a pretty far right. Jamaal Bowman from southwest Westchester in the northern portion of the Bronx through Westchester and into Putnam County. You don't have to say the words, I think, that we don't want you here. You don't have to say it. Your actions spoke that, I think. The actions of the Democratic Party in this state, I think, spoke that with this redistricting. We had all these complaints from Republicans. Democrats have their own things to complain about, too.
Democrats are just like the Republicans. They're full of talk. The Democrats in Congress and across the country are bemoaning the Republican strategy of redistricting to eliminate the impact of minority votes. And then they do the same thing in the elitist Democratic Party of New York when they redistrict two of their brightest young Black men to enter Congress in a long time.
Mondaire Jones has done a lot in just over a year in office on the Westchester side, on the Rockland side, too. So I'm not sure what the problem is here outside of the fact that they represent a different wing of the party outside of the establishment. And as we know, the establishment, regardless of party, just simply doesn't like that. They feel that they are entitled to power. And sometimes when you feel like you are entitled to power, you find yourself out of power. State Senator Alexandra Biaggi, the granddaughter of one-time Bronx Congressman
Mario targeted Biaggi. Too.
She's running for Congress. She's targeted too. She's in a new district that, well, Tom Suozzi is technically in this district now. He's running for governor. I don't think he's got any chance. Like a bat out of hell, basically. He's got no chance, I think, Tom Suozzi, but he won't be in Congress anymore in this new district. Now, not only is basically focused in Nassau County, where Suozzi is and where that district is now, it's changed around to a piece of northwestern Suffolk, all the way across through Nassau and through the northern portions of Queens and the Bronx and the South Shore area of Westchester. When you ask the state Democratic Party, how could you redistrict like that? And the answer is, well, we put together all communities who are concerned about the environmental impacts upon the Long Island Sound area. Okay,
so
that's a pretty
cares.
creative
I got
answer.
A word to the Democrats. Nobody cares about Long Island Sound. It's
we
clean
care
as a
about it,
whistle.
but it's not the only issue. It's not how you put a district together, obviously. I guess they knew Alexandra Biaggi wanted to run for Congress, and they put it together in a way so that she is going to have a pretty big fight on her hand if she wants to win. That's
now,
what it all
this is terrible. The establishment walks, nobody talks. They don't like people upsetting their various liaisons established over the years and cronies in Congress. And it's just a terrible demonstration of what minorities face in trying to get representation today. If you get out the vote in the district and you elect three good persons like a daughter of a congressman, Ms. Biaggi, Mondaire Jones, who with an uphill fight to win in that district anyway for the Nita Lowy seat. I mean, let's face it. I mean,
Lee Zeldin, considered the leading candidate on the Republican side for governor, Eastern Suffolk congressman. A video surfaced from 2011 where he was making a speech and Andrew Cuomo, who was already governor, was on hand. Lee Zeldin said this country would be in better shape right now, Andy Cuomo, if you were our president. That resurfaced. Rob Astorino grabbed that and pounced on it and said, look, now you see why Lee Zeldin voted the way he did when he was in Albany many times. He was just a Democratic Party tool calling himself a Republican, and the Democrats always knew they could count on him.
Well, everybody makes unfortunate statements. Mitt Romney made a statement that cost him the presidency in a closed meeting and went across the nation and was reverberated. It really hurt him. And
Howard Dean acted in a way that cost him the Democratic nomination one night. Long time ago.
Yeah.
Kenneth Chamberlain, that case in the city of White Plains takes another turn, it seems. Update us on that.
Well, apparently they had a meeting on it about 2 weeks ago and listened to a possible settlement. And
of an incident that occurred in November 2011, more than 10 years ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the civil suit accusing negligence apart the city of White Plains and wrongful death. And at this point, it is my information they did not vote on the settlement at that meeting. So
why?
It is not. Well, it's an executive session and nobody tells you what goes on in it if it is politically unpopular. I was the only one who reported it. And it was interesting to me that they didn't, that the handout media, which rely on handouts from the city when the city doesn't want something published, and they did not have it. And so I checked and got a source to tell me they took it up, but they did not come to a decision on it. Well, that may or may not be true. They may vote on it on the next common council meeting.
An
That's
incident
what
that
they
happened
might
over
do.
a decade ago. Have there been positive changes as a result of this case, of this tragedy?
Well, the only proof is in the pudding. The White Plains Police Department has not shot any person in 10 years.
That's
That shows
start.
you. That's a start. I think that they saw the problem there, and it was most unfortunate. And they have taken steps to create a way to handle this. But they are being that's just it. They haven't shot anybody, fleeing or otherwise, in 10 years. And that's to be commended about their ability to work with neighborhoods in the city, mostly minority, where some of these people flee to or perhaps live. And I'm not saying they all live there, okay? I don't want anybody to get that wrong. But they work. They police work, they investigate, they have a good relationship, they find out who did it, and they get arrested peacefully or apprehended peacefully, usually, unless they come from out of town and slip into posh malls, do a shoplifting, which is now front page news and for every television station around the country. You know,
at the White Plains Mall.
It's a crime. It's terrible, 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 terrible. Shoplifting has existed. Teenage girls shoplift, teenage boys shoplift. And it's only been recently then that it has become a business. Now, the police are investigating those, and my suspicion is they're trying to link it to sort of like a Fagin gang, an Oliver Twist gang set up where they employ people, pay them money to rob the expensive. Yeah, I'm just saying that the reason, and to go on and just say, oh, this is violent crime. It's not violent, it's a shoplift. And stores have insurance against that. They don't want security guards getting into a fracas, and perhaps shooting innocent bystanders, because that's worse. That's worse. And the merchandise can always be replaced, and it's insured. So that's why
merchandise can be replaced, but
tolerated,
cannot be replaced.
And they should make a point when they do a national shoplifting story.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of lazy people.
I also think this is not all gang activity related, what we've seen gone on in White Plains and around the country. Sometimes somebody wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to lift A, B, and C from this store here. And they don't need to consult with a gang hierarchy to get the okay to go do that. They just go and do that. That's simple.
Yeah, but if you work with a gang, they bail you out. They pay your legal fees, something like that. I mean, it's a business. Organized crime is a business, although the penalties for failure are a little worse than
they're a little harder and harsher usually.
Yes, right.
If you mess up, if you get caught.
You start working for organized crime, and it's like the prostitution racket. You become a prostitute, you are giving up your freedom, because you are going to be working for somebody, particularly if you're a solo operator, and the weed of crime bears bitter fruit. Unless
John Bailey, we thank you for joining us as usual here on Westchester Talk Radio. Right. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Bailey, publisher, editor, White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, WPCNR.com, also the host of White Plains Week, and people to be heard on cable systems all around Westchester. Catch John on the cable system nearest you. I'm John Marino, and we are Westchester Talk Radio on the Beat in Westchester, produced by Sharc Creative. Made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis by Hightower. Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard by White Plains Hospital. by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins Mahopac Bank. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County talk radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. We have an app now. Download it. Take it with you anywhere and everywhere you go. It's called Westchester Talk.